One of the things that got myself and quite a few other people excited with the release of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 9 was the fact that we got a major reveal when we saw where exactly Boruto and Kashi and Koji were hiding and using a base of operations, which was the fact that we saw Boruto and Kashi and Koji inside of Orochimaru's hideout, made evident by the snake torches on the wall and the snake skin pattern of the walls, the exact same one that we saw in Naruto Gaiden, the 7th Hokage, and the Scarlet Spring, better known to anime fans as the Shin Uchiha arc in Boruto's anime. And for me personally, the reason why I think that this deserves to be an even bigger deal being made out of it by fans than what we've seen is because of what it represents and what it means for a key part of Orochimaru's character. That's why in today's newest Naruto Explained video, I want to talk to you guys about why you should care about the narrative opportunities that we have with Orochimaru and Kashi and Koji working together, and what this means for the closing of some of the wounds for Orochimaru's character via an often overlooked line from the Naruto manga itself, because it was overshadowed by all the crazy stuff going on at the time when that said chapter came out. As a quick reminder, the 2.5-hour Boruto video is going to be dropping the second week of June, so mark your calendars, because the editor cooked up a movie for that one, and I'm very proud of that 60-page script I wrote for that video, especially the last half of the video itself. Grab your popcorn and snacks for that one, because you are not going to want to miss that one. So getting back to the Orochimaru topic, him getting the chance to meet with Kashi and Koji, it builds on a few things, and we're gonna unpack them in this video. Those things are as follows: Orochimaru's stance on cloning, Orochimaru's views on the subject of death and rebirth, including a fear of death, and most importantly, the closure he never got with Jiraiya that it was heavily implied in the manga was something that was on his mind, to a bigger degree than he let on when speaking about Jiraiya's death in the manga. It's going to be that last point that I'm going to start with, which normally that would be a point that I would save for last, but given the over-the-top thumbnail I've got planned for this one, we got to get that part addressed right up front. Otherwise, someone's going to say, oh my god, that's clickbait, even though it would have been addressed at the back end of the video. But hey, it is what it is. When we go back to the manga chapter where Tsunade is saved by Orochimaru and Karin, there's a key bit of dialogue towards the tail end of that scene that when the manga chapter first came out back in 2013, I found myself never being able to move away from it because Tsunade spoke the quiet part out loud about Orochimaru. This Orochimaru, for all his talk about the Moon Eye plan and getting in the way of his own ambitions, this Orochimaru had changed in a visible way, and it's oftentimes the people who know you the best or who have been with you the longest who can see the change first, which is Tsunade checks off both of those boxes. She was Orochimaru's teammate for decades, and even as he began to fall into the darkness, that was still a bond that you can't really look past or ignore for a degree, because the time that you spend with someone, going on missions with someone, training with someone, and in their case fighting in constant side-by-side death battles during the Second Ninja War, that's something that forever bonds you in a way where words cannot be used to describe it. When Orochimaru tries to brush it off, he merely says that, quote, people change. Either that or they die before they can change. He died as he was, end quote. Orochimaru does try to downplay the fact that the Orochimaru who stood right there before Tsunade was different than the one who 10 months prior to this in the timeline was super sadistic and hell-bent on becoming one with Sasuke and putting himself in Sasuke's body via the living corpse jutsu, where Sasuke's soul would be placed in a corner of Orochimaru's mind and Orochimaru would gain control of Sasuke's body. He remarks that Jiraiya died the way that he was, but this is again Orochimaru putting off dealing with the elephant in the room, which is he changed following Jiraiya's death, and Tsunade noticed it and Tsunade called him on it. She tells him that had Orochimaru changed earlier, back when Jiraiya spent all those years chasing after Orochimaru and trying to bring him back to the side of Konoha, Jiraiya still would have been alive and he wouldn't have died, and one could make the argument that Tsunade wasn't wrong here. If Orochimaru never left, and say had never been evil, or say Jiraiya had won him over after he left the village, Jiraiya wouldn't have been going to the Rain Village alone. Jiraiya, for as big of a goof as he is, he was still able to kill 3 of the Pains on his own, and once he went into Sage mode, those Pains, they started falling like dominoes. If Jiraiya had Orochimaru there providing him backup. Jiraiya could have gone into Sage Mode faster. He wouldn't have been pressured or caught off guard, and he likely would have figured out that Nagato was controlling the bodies of the Pains even sooner than he did, without having to lose an arm, without having to die sinking into the ocean, hoping to go find Nemo or Jaws or whichever one got to his body first. Tsunade is drawn with a stare at Orochimaru, as if she is looking through him as she's watching Orochimaru digest the information. Someone whose mind is always racing like Orochimaru is information he's probably already considered well before the conversation took place, and I always found it fascinating because Orochimaru's response, it gave us insight into how he truly felt. He said that things can't always go the way that they want, that you cannot be a monolith forever, and that eventually change comes. This in of itself reflects what Tsunade said. Orochimaru had changed because he had taken a step towards accepting death itself, which has been a core part of his character, and the loss of Jiraiya is what I believe we can say played a role in that. Sure, by this point, he's already taken over Zetsu's body, a body that doesn't need food or water to operate on, a body that doesn't age, and it's a body that is packaged with Hashirama cells that are overflowing with life force and power. But he is someone for decades ran away from the Grim Reaper in his quest for immortality. I won't go over that bit too far in detail because I've already done a 15-minute video essay specifically on that topic that one of my best editors worked on that covers the deeper connections between Orochimaru and the concept of death itself, which I'll leave in the end credits of this video as well. However, I will point out one key scene from the manga that shows us a glimpse into how Orochimaru viewed death, which is the scene where a young Orochimaru was mourning his parents and the third Hokage pulled up to the grave next to him. Depending on the translation you use, here's and either tells him that the white skin of the snake, it symbolized good luck and renewal, or it symbolizes good luck and rebirth, which I tend to go with the latter translation for this reason. Hiruzen tells Orochimaru that finding the snake skin at his parents' grave, it means that his parents are reborn and that one day he'll see them again. And we see Orochimaru looking down at that snake skin, obsessed with it, clinging on to hope that he can find his parents again, something that he kept all the way up until the time he left Konoha. We see it in the lab that Anko visited when she was his Genin student. And during the time when he was researching the curse mark and living corpse jutsu, we still saw it. We even still saw it in some of the hideouts that Orochimaru is at. Orochimaru looking for ways to cheat death, to find ways to roll back the clock, to find ways to rebirth himself if he ever got killed. It all goes back to that scene in question. Orochimaru is someone who looks at death through a different light, both as a child when he was at that grave, as well as a scientist who knows more about the process of death, life, and rebirth. And he's constantly looking for a better way to understand that cycle. Orochimaru had begun to change when he met Tsunade, yet the expression goes, the more things change, the more they ultimately stay the same for a reason. And we see that with Orochimaru and his cloning experiments in the Boruto era, in particular in Naruto Gaiden. He's already toying around with cloning. He's playing God, and he's making two of his children, Log and Mitsuki, clones of himself, and in the case of Mitsuki, backing up his memories to study them. He's got multiple versions of Mitsuki at his disposal to be used, as he needs them to be used should it be called for. He's referred to his clones as being mere copies, detached, and yet we've seen as time has passed on that since that statement in Naruto Gaiden, the 7th Hokage in the Scarlet Spring back in 2015, that Orochimaru, he's been shown caring for his son, truly caring about his child, slowly but surely. And one has to wonder what the first moment with Jiraiya's own clone Kashin Koji would have entailed for Orochimaru and how it would have went down. Orochimaru is of the belief that clones, they are mere copies of the original through and through, yet his own son behaves differently than himself. His son has his own free will, and he is discovering his own version of humanity. Kashin Koji contains Jiraiya's DNA, and that DNA carries in it Jiraiya's own genetic memories, which we've seen awaken before Ishiki defeated him. Orochimaru said Jiraiya died before he could change. Kashin Koji is distinctly different than Jiraiya in personality and behavior and in the way that he fights. They use the same jutsu, but they use them in different ways. he's even stronger and more talented than Jiraiya. That's not even up for debate. Kashin Koji would whoop Jiraiya's ass. Saying otherwise is somebody coping. We don't see the two toes on Koji's shoulders telling him that, quote, you need to learn to go into Sage Mode on your own, end quote, and that, quote, even Jiraiya couldn't fully master Sage Mode, end quote. Koji has the pigment markers of a perfect sage. That's something that the manga directly tells us. Anyone with those pigment markers is better at Sage Mode than Jiraiya was. He's able to fully balance his own chakra and his nature energy without any issues. He's colder and more calculated than Jiraiya was. We see Koji literally blowing up his toads and dispersing oil and using the fire release after they got covered in the toad oil for a reason. He's more brutal. Could Orochimaru view Koji as what a changed Jiraiya might have been? Perhaps. Or he could view him as simply being a clone, nothing more and nothing less. But the biggest thing is that it allows Orochimaru the chance to get closure he never got with Jiraiya's death, and that is something I find truly fascinating, because Jiraiya's gone, yet his clone is able to see with his eyes that look just like Jiraiya's eyes, and see a version of Orochimaru who is no longer Theta Konoha and has a son who is a Konoha shinobi. Jiraiya's clone gets to see the one thing that the real Jiraiya had always wanted to see, which is his friend Orochimaru back at peace, back in the village. And that's why I truly hope we get to see these two interact at some point in the manga, now that they're clearly at Orochimaru's hideout. I'm not saying Orochimaru's going to break down into tears, even though for the thumbnail, you better believe I'm going to have Orochimaru crying like a baby on the thumbnail, just to see which people fall for the stance of, bro, I can't believe it. He said Orochimaru's going to cry when he meets Kashin Koji. That's never going to happen. When I never said anything like that. But hey, let them folks cook. Let them make food poisoning. The real ones that watch the videos, they get the point of this. But I do think it's a great closure for their characters, which I think that's going to be the ultimate payoff for Orochimaru, to see why I feel this strongly about Orochimaru and all those concepts of death. You'll want to click on the left for the Orochimaru video essay I mentioned earlier.